Hello, this is Yogesh from IT department. We are live on YouTube now.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing and our Child Learning and Development Center, I, Mrs. Sangeeta Rishi Pathak, extend a very warm welcome to all those who have joined us today for this insightful webinar on a very sensitive yet important topic on suicide prevention in children. So basically, our aim today is to create awareness on this important topic by better understanding the red flags, the warning signs, the reasons, and how we can help children and families through early intervention. And who better than Dr. Girija Mahale, with her vast experience and expertise, can shed light on this crucial topic by providing some valuable insights. So we are highly privileged to have Dr. Girija Mahale with us. She is the head of Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing and highly experienced consultant psychiatrist. Dr. Girija has worked extensively in the field of mental health as she has passionately dedicated her career in the mental health of children, adolescents, and young adults. She also heads the BSc Mental Health degree program for those aspiring to pursue a career in the vital field of mental health. And today she will be sharing her important insights on this crucial topic. So welcome, Dr. Girija ma'am. It's absolute pleasure to have you with us to talk on such a critical topic.
Thank you, Sangeeta, for such a lovely introduction and for giving me this opportunity to reach out to our wider audience today. So first of all, I'd like to welcome all those parents, teachers, and any others who have joined us on this Friday afternoon on YouTube. So a very warm welcome to all our audience.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And so as we begin with today's topic, I would like to tell all our listeners and audience that at any moment, if you feel uncomfortable or overwhelmed, then please do take a break. Please do step out for some time. And if you have any questions, any queries, then please type them in the chat box of YouTube. We will definitely try to address all the questions regarding this topic towards the end of the webinar. So as we begin and as we delve into today's conversation, some of you might even be thinking, or some may even wonder that, is it necessary to suicide prevention in children, considering their age? And so suicide is something considered that only something which adults do or young adults do. So I think let's begin this conversation by asking ma'am that why do you think it's important to address this topic considering their tender age?
Right. Thank you, Sangeeta. I think that's a very good opening question as to why are we really talking about suicide, and that too particularly in children. Because if you look at the statistics, not just the world statistics, even the statistics in India, and I know that most people won't possibly be reading statistics, but even if you open the newspaper every day, you will find at least 3 to 4 reports about suicides happening in young adults, children, whether it's college-going students or even school-going children. So the reason of talking about this topic today is that the incidence of suicides amongst children is also increasing. So the age of death by suicide is actually going down, which is very, very concerning. And we are actually seeing that children in the age group of 10 to 14 are now, the incidence of suicides among these age group is also increasing. Over the last 10 to 12 years, we are seeing that there is an increasing trend among the 10 to 14-year-olds, which means 5th standard to 9th standard. And therefore, it's very, very important to, raise awareness. Why does this happen? And what we can do to prevent suicides happening in this age group is very, very critical to talk and address in schools, in communities, in homes. And it's vital because suicide is preventable. That's my firm belief and conviction. And I think just by noting that the prevalence rate is only increasing, it's clear that our efforts are not enough. We need to go that extra mile to ensure that our young children are protected and they do not take this kind of an extreme step to hurt themselves. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very important that this young generation is protected and we identify these red flags early in them.
Absolutely, ma'am. So as you said, if the prevalence is there, and we do see that, the general age has come down where children have died of suicide. So, but what, according to you, could be the key reasons? Like children as young as 10 to 14 years, as you said, they may even experience suicidal thoughts.
Yeah. So, Sangeeta, I mean, traditionally, if you look, what are the reasons for suicide? First, I'll talk about the general reasons for suicide, and then I'll specifically talk about what are some of the key reasons that we're seeing that children are taking this extreme step, right? Most common reason for when we study or do a psychological autopsy of people who've died by suicide, we find that they were harboring some signs of mental health issues or mental illness. The most common being depression, or then other severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia or anxiety disorders like post-traumatic stress disorder or bipolar disorder, or even substance use disorders, right? So if they have dependent on alcohol or any other addictive substances, then there is a higher chance of death by suicide because the likelihood of them developing irrational thoughts or feeling really hopeless, worthless, and having these kind of extremely negative thoughts is very high among people with mental illness. So mental illness, number one. Number two is any crisis situation, right? Where you do not have the adequate, where the individual feels that he or she or they do not have the necessary coping resources or coping mechanisms in that moment to deal with that crisis. For example, it could be a breakup for a young person, a relationship breakdown, or it could be, say, in a young adult, a loss of a job or significant financial loss, or even a death of a near close one. In children particularly, we see that severe conflict between the parents or or a recent divorce among the parents can also be a significant cause of like a crisis situation in that child's life, which might end up making the child feel that there is no hope for the future and I do not have anyone to support me, and therefore they might end up taking this extreme step. So crisis situations. Third is children who have experienced, or generally children, young adults, people who have gone through any form of, they've experienced violence of any kind or abuse of any kind, or they have grown in conflict-prone areas or disaster-prone areas or war zones. They are also, because they are enduring trauma for a prolonged duration of time, that's likely to impact their mental health, and therefore these ideas of helplessness, because they feel trapped in that situation and therefore they don't see any hope for the future. And in that case also, these individuals are likely to take that extreme step. So any form of abuse, whether it's emotional, physical, sexual, if any child has endured over a period of time, and I'll talk more about the bullying also happening over online platforms, and that's a very, very important thing that I'm going to talk separately about, because social media in itself can be one of the very big risk factors, right? And fourthly is individuals who are vulnerable, right? Because of their differences, because they do not conform to the what we say is normal, right? So when in talking in the context of children, they would be children with neurodevelopmental disorders, like who are on the spectrum, autism spectrum, or children with learning disability, children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, children with intellectual disability, right? So children who are differently abled are therefore likely to also experience discrimination in different settings, whether it's school, whether it's their societies, whether it's their family, or whether it's a neighborhood. If they have had negative experiences where they have been put off or not been included in social circles, then the feelings of loneliness, isolation can creep in, and that can make them vulnerable to take this extreme step. Children also belonging or identifying themselves as different in terms of their sexual orientation or in terms of their gender identity, like the LGBTQIA plus community, like lesbian, gay, bisexual, intersex, queer community, right? So who again are very vulnerable to be discriminated in society because they identify them. They themselves have, first of all, have their struggle coming to terms with their own identity or their sexual orientation. Because this constant social message that they're getting is that this is not okay, this is not normal. And therefore, there is an internal struggle that these individuals go through, which first of all makes it very difficult for them to develop their own identity. And then to come out with this is another big challenge because they're not accepted by society, or they're teased, they're bullied, they're harassed. All forms of harassment, sexual harassment is very, very high among the LGBTQIA plus community. And when these individuals therefore have had such negative experiences, they are again likely to develop mental health issues, as well as they're likely to experience these crisis situations where they might feel a complete lack of hope and be in a state of despair, which then makes them take this kind of an extreme step. So these are some of the very common reasons. And as I said, in children, it could be, academic failures, it could be relationship breakup, it could be conflicts at home, which are significant in the form of domestic violence that they're witnessing or experiencing, any form of abuse that they're experiencing, either from the family or from anyone else. Another very important cause, and I think many of you, the audience, might have read in newspaper about the recent incidents of 7th standard student taking their life by suicide, and the reason that was found was addiction on social media, right, or gaming addiction. So again, mobile phones are, again, while they're a source of great information and a great tool to actually connect with individuals who are really far away from you. The world has definitely become a small place with technology. However, if not used properly, definitely there are disadvantages. So one is the social media platforms itself, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, n number of other platforms which kids use. Second is the gaming, the internet games or online games that children engage in right from an early age, and that's quite addictive because it also acts on the same principles like substance use. Just like, when a person drinks alcohol or when smokes a cigarette, there are certain neurochemicals that are released in brain, which creates a sensation of pleasure. And that reinforces that behavior and makes that individual again engage in drinking alcohol or smoking. Similarly, when a child is engaging in games, they're so stimulating and pleasure inducing that dopamine gets released, a chemical gets released in the child's brain, which makes them or rewards them and makes the child go back to the game again and again. So after a period of time, it so happens that without the child's realization, the child is spending excessive time on the game at the expense of all other things. And ultimately, the child becomes so isolated and lonely that he starts to develop depressive symptoms. And in that whole situation, the child can end up taking that extreme step. Moreover, there are certain online games which actually give instructions to children, right? And again, so it's difficult to predict which type of children are likely to get hooked on to such games. Most of the research studies suggest that children who are vulnerable or are already going through some mental health issues or are troubled emotionally are likely to get attracted to such games which are very gory in nature. Like they will give you very dark suggestions. And ultimate, they'll challenge the child to do, to dare to do things. And as one of the last steps in the game would be to, end their life either by jumping off, or taking some very dire steps which can be fatal. So these are some of the reasons, Sangeeta, that suicides happen in children.
Yes, ma'am, rightfully. And I think, as you rightly pointed out, bullying and separation at home, fear of losing one of the parent, and of course the social media and game addiction these are the prominent reasons amongst others those are seen in children, and that is very alarming, and I'm sure very challenging for the caregivers to keep a track on. But also along with children dying by suicide, self-harm is something that we see is very prominent with children, especially after 6th standard, and so it has been observed in school that children do resort to self-harm. So it is a very misunderstood behavior, and the question here arises is self-harm in some way connected to suicide, or it differs from suicidal behavior? So something about self-harm, if we come to know.
Yeah, very, very important, because self-harm is increasingly becoming common. And so the basic difference between a suicide attempt and self-harm is the intent with which both involve hurting oneself, but the intention in both differs. So self-harm is when a person engages in self-injurious behavior, that is hurting themselves, but without any suicidal intent. That is, the intention is not to kill oneself, but there could be n number of different intentions, which I'll talk about. Whereas in a suicide attempt, the person is attempting to harm oneself with the clear intention to die or not live, right? So self-harm is often used by adolescents as a coping mechanism to deal with emotional distress. जब बच्चों को बहुत ज़्यादा stress हो जाता है and they don't have the healthy coping mechanisms to deal with that kind of a mental pain, then they engage in this self-harm behavior, which they call as, आप अगर classically हमारे session में आप बच्चों को सुनोगे जो self-harm करते हैं, वो बोलेंगे कि we do it for relief from the mental pain, and that physical pain distracts them from the mental pain that they're experiencing daily. So it's like a distraction, it's like a mechanism to numb themselves. It's also some children will describe that the sight of blood helps them to calm themselves. So it acts as a coping mechanism for many adolescents, which is a learned behavior. So how do they discover that this coping mechanism? Either they've observed someone else in school, or again on social media, because they're already going through some emotional distress. They're likely to search things on social media, right? So they're likely to follow people who are then posting things about self-harm on social media, which they're likely to role model. And therefore, again, so it's like a peer influence also, which therefore teaches them this coping mechanism. And again, it's very addictive. So self-harm is also addictive, because in that moment, they get that instant relief from that emotional pain, which then becomes like so it's like that instant relief creates the sensation that, okay, this is my go-to when I'm feeling distressed. And therefore, every time the child experiences mental distress, their brain automatically tells them that, okay, self-harm, say I felt better last time, so I might engage in it again and again. After a certain while, the child realizes that this is possibly not the right way of coping, but it's so difficult for the child to refrain from it that it kind of becomes a very addictive pattern for the child, and the child keeps engaging in this unhealthy coping mechanism. Okay, but how is it related to suicide? Self-harm is often found as a risk factor for suicides later on in life. So should we take self-harm seriously? Yes, of course we should take self-harm, because it's definitely a risk factor for suicidal behavior. All right, but Is it equivalent to a suicide attempt? Mostly no. Unless you talk to the individual, you will not know whether it is a suicide attempt or a self-harm, because what is the intention of hurting oneself, one needs to ascertain in order to differentiate between a non-suicidal self-injurious or self-harm behavior versus a suicide attempt. But both need to be taken equally seriously and need to be intervened into immediately.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think it was really necessary to talk about self-harm also, because as you rightly said, it has to be taken seriously, could be risk factor, could be like a kind of a dress rehearsal for suicide, because if a child is already indulging in self-harm, and all the more it is disturbing that it is addictive. So we have to take it seriously. So that was very important. And that what brings us to our next question is, okay, but then what if the signs, if could you help us understand the warning signs? Like, okay, now we know what is suicide, what is self-harm, but then how can the caregivers identify that the child is at risk? So there must be some signs which, if seen, parents can identify, okay, these are the
Right.
signs, we have to be alert.
Sure. So the good thing is that out of every 5 suicides, at least 4, there are some definite warning signs that the person has exhibited, which makes suicide preventable, right? Because there are warning signs, and most people don't quite, because they're not aware what these warning signs are, tend to miss out on these warning signs, which could be crucial for places for intervention. So what are these warning signs? These warning signs could be observed through the child's behavior. So there could be some behavioral signs. So I'll first enumerate the behavioral signs. So a child who has started withdrawing themselves from social situations. So a child who is generally mixing up, say with family, or who used to sit at the dining table for dinner, now starts to sit in the bedroom, locks oneself in the bedroom, isolates oneself, or is not engaging with peers, with his friends, not going out to play, not interacting with school children, with their friends in class, in the classroom. Okay, if their academic grades are also going down, a child who is generally bright is now struggling with his academics, or the child is refusing to go to school, the child's sleep is disturbed. Either the child is not sleeping at all, or the child is sleeping excessively through the day, or the child is spending excessive time on gadgets, is also a warning sign. Okay, excessive time is being very secretive about what the child is doing on the gadget is also not to be ignored. If the child is not eating food, or there are changes in the child's appetite or eating patterns or habits, wherein you observe that either the child is not eating or the child is binge eating. Then this self-harm, as I said, as a behavioral sign, if you observe any cuts, and you may not directly observe, sometimes the children are very smart. They know that they don't want to show that they're self-harming. So they will wear clothes, full-sleeved clothes, usually. They'll wear a sweatshirt, or they'll wear a cardigan that will cover their wrists so that they're not visible. The self-harm marks are not visible. So if your child is wearing unusual clothes during summer months, then that's also something you need to be curious about as a parent or as a teacher. Right? Or the child is suddenly displaying behavior which is out of character for the child. So the child is otherwise a very quiet child, but now suddenly very excited, very bubbly, or demonstrates extreme calmness. Otherwise, the child was irritable, but now suddenly has gone very calm and quiet. Okay, as if there is a sense of relief on the child that is observed, which may actually look like, okay, great, but this is an absolute sudden change in behavior, right? Which again needs to be considered as a red flag. Or the child is engaging in sudden risky behaviors like driving recklessly, or has started engaging in substance use, drinking. A child who was otherwise not doing all of this has now suddenly started engaging in such kind of reckless or risky behaviors, is demonstrating impulsive behaviors, where the child is doing things without thinking, impulsively shopping or impulsively buying or impulsively self-harming. All these would be behaviors that would be classified as red flags. There could be some things that the child may demonstrate in terms of their emotions. Okay, so where you observe that the child is sad. I mean, you can make out a child who is sad, who is, cries very often on small things, or is generally not smiling, or when a joke is being cracked in the family, usually when we are all sitting together and a conversation is happening, a child who is sad will not instantly react to that or respond with a smile or a laugh, and will be observed to be not demonstrating too many expressions on their face. That's how you can identify the sadness. The child may not be very verbal, right? The child may not say that I'm feeling sad, but you can make that out through the child's expressions on the non-verbal behavior. Or the child is demonstrating mood swings, right? Often in adolescence, we see that mood swings is quite normal and natural. But when it's excessive, it's pervasive, it's not really settling down, or it's happening, it's happening too frequently, then it's a sign of concern that at one point the child is extremely, angry, is throwing an tantrum, is getting very aggressive. The other hand, the child is extremely sad and not really interacting with anyone. On the other hand, he's extremely bubbly and laughing and, all over the place. So if these kind of mood swings are observed, that's also a sign that the child is possibly struggling with regulating their emotions and therefore needs to be looked into. So these could be or anxiety, even a child experiencing panic attacks. Okay, so where there is severe anxiety, where the child feels like signs, almost similar symptoms of a heart attack, where the child experiences chest pain, difficulty in breathing, where the child feels a loss of control, like the child feels like I cannot control my body or myself, and therefore can feel quite helpless in that situation and may get these extreme thoughts in that moment because the child is not thinking straight. Okay, and again, as I said, the child may also demonstrate or demonstrate these signs of suicide through their thought process, which are noticed through their speech, verbal behavior, right? So do not ignore statements like, the child says, I don't want to do this anymore. Or I wish I went to sleep and I did not wake up tomorrow. Or the child says that, I want to be with God. Or I can't do this anymore, or I wish I was never born. So statements like this, which may to an ordinary person seem like, a casual statement that a person is passing, but often this is a real one, because see, unless a suicidal thought has crossed your mind, what is speech? Speech is nothing but our thoughts that are visible, right? So unless it has crossed your mind, the child will not speak this. So it is definitely maybe that the child is not thinking seriously about it, but who is going to take that chance? We should not be taking that chance of, many people say that, oh, that way though, then there will be so many, children who will demonstrate, but they must just be attention seeking, or they must just be joking about it. But I always feel that give the benefit of doubt, and, there's no harm in inquiring or asking or empathizing and, ruling out that there's no risk. So it's very important that as parents, as educators, that we don't take these signs lightly, and any of these subtle signs also that you observe are absolutely taken seriously and are intervened into to find out whether there is an actual risk or not. And if we do that, I'm sure that we'll be able to actually help a lot more individuals, because suicide behavior is nothing but a cry for help. The individual who actually nobody wants to end their life, right? But in that moment, the person is experiencing so much of despair that he, she, or they cannot see any hope or cannot see any help available, but it's actually a cry for help. And if there is somebody who is giving that help or empathizing with them in that moment, that individual will think differently. And if given the right support and necessary intervention, definitely that life can be saved. Which is why, I never take any of these signs lightly. Although they may seem like, how can you say that this is a risk of suicide? Many, because I've conducted these sessions previously and a lot of people have raised these doubts that this way though, how can we go and ask that, I'll tell you how do we ask? How do we approach it sensitively and how do we not confront an individual? I will definitely talk about this. I'm sure you'll have questions about it. But I guess also one of the things that children often do is giving away their possessions, loved possessions, right? So it could be something that's very dear to them that when they've decided or when they have planned that they're going to end their life by suicide, they will give away their prized possessions. Or they might post something on social media, right? They might, I've seen individuals who take off their DP from their WhatsApp or from their Facebook or block people out from their social media platform. So that's again a sign that something's not right. Or definitely needs to be looked into. So these are, of course, this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but I've tried to cover the major red flags that an individual or a child might show that needs to be intervened.
Absolutely, ma'am. And I think even our audience must have taken note of all the behavioral signs, the emotional signs. And of course, when children do talk about suicide, so I hope these are the important signs. But then what, let's say that parent or teacher notices some of these warning signs. So what are the immediate steps they can take to notice, if they notice that the child might be at risk? So what can they do to provide immediate support?
Yeah. So if you have noticed any child who is displaying any of these red flags, then it's important to address them there and then. Okay. Do not wait to see whether it's resolving. Can I wait till tomorrow? Or, it's important that you talk to the individual. Now, how do you approach? So again, it's important. The setting and the context is very important. So ensure that the child is in a safe space, that the space is confidential for a private conversation, because the child is not going to open up if you ask the child in an open classroom, right? Or in a family setting also, if all the family members are there, the child may not feel comfortable enough. Already the child is going through a lot. The child is finding it difficult to express. So the setting is very important, that the child is being spoken to in a very private and safe space. Second is your approach. So again, ensuring that you are at the same level as the child, that if the child is sitting down, you also sit down next to the child and the child is made comfortable. Okay. And then in a very gentle tone, with warmth, with kindness, you tell that, I'm curious, or I see that you're possibly struggling with something, or I see that something's not quite right. Would you want to talk about it? So this way you may open up the conversation, and you'll also first ensure that, I'm here to have a conversation with you on a sensitive topic. And whatever you're going to share will stay between you and me. But of course, we may need to involve people if you need more support. You can put it like that to the child. And that way you're ensuring that, the confidentiality part of it. And then you ask the child directly, like, I'm wondering if you're having thoughts of not wanting to live. Okay. You can ask this directly without mincing words, without beating around the bush. Absolutely not saying things like, I hope you're not thinking of killing yourself. This is a very common mistake that people make, that please don't think of, suicide. That suicide is not the answer to your problems. by doing this, what happens is the child, in fact, feels ki, oh, that means I'm being weak if I'm experiencing such thoughts. Suicidal thoughts don't come to strong people, right? So that means I'm weak, and then that means there's something definitely wrong. Okay, so never say such things. In fact, say that I'm observing that you're not looking okay, or you're looking really sad, and I wonder if because I heard you saying such things, I wonder if such thoughts of not wanting to live are crossing your mind. If the answer to that is yes, then of course you're going to explore more and ask, oh, really? How? I'm sorry to hear that, but I really want to know more because I'm here to help and support you. This can be a really difficult time that you're going through, and I can see that you're hurting. I can see that you're experiencing a lot of pain. And I want to assure you that I'm going to be here to support you. And, we can deal with this together. So that itself will provide a relief to the child that, oh, I'm not alone in this, and that somebody is there who understands me, who's willing to understand me, who's willing to listen to me without really reacting or judging me, who is not just advising me, but is willing to listen. Okay, so you're not getting into the advisory mode at all. You're just trying to understand what the child is going through. You're just listening at this point. And once the child then starts to open up, then the next line of intervention can come into the place, where then you can connect to a mental health professional. You can connect with the immediate family. And again, ensuring that the child is not being judged for this, that the child, that this news doesn't spread everywhere, ensuring that confidentiality is being maintained with the right people, and getting the child help, the professional help is very, very crucial. So the crisis intervention can be done by the teacher or by the family member, but ultimately a mental health professional is required to assess whether the child is suffering from some mental illness, or what is the problem that is actually leading to these suicidal thoughts, will definitely need to be investigated and assessed by a professional. But the initial assessment or identification part, along with provision of support, can definitely be done by anyone in the community. Just like we say, first aid is something that each one of us knows. In school, we have a first aid toolbox. Like anyone falls, we know immediately that we need to apply pressure to the wound to stop it from bleeding so that there's no further harm. We need to clean the wound and we need to apply a bandage before we can call the doctor to see whether the injury is serious or not. Right? Similarly, here also, it's important that that first aid, that psychological first aid, identifying the child is in distress, acknowledging that the child is in distress, validating the child's emotions, and telling the child that I'm here to listen, I'm here to understand what you're going through, and I'm here to support you, will make a world of difference to this child. Okay, because that's what the child is looking for. No child, believe me, Sangeeta, will ever think of dying at that age. That age is where your hopes and dreams are high. You have a quest for life, and having such extreme thoughts, just imagine what pain that child must be going through. So that's where that empathy is very, very important, that if a child you identify is going through a problem, rather than judging and saying that, oh my God, this generation is really, gone, what sort of things they are doing. They must be watching something on television or social media, or their parents are not paying attention towards them. And that's why they're getting into all these kind of behaviors. Rather than judging all of this, keep these judgments, let your prejudices and biases not come into the picture. Identify this as an opportunity that you can actually save a life. And that's going to give you immense satisfaction as a human being, that you've actually helped to save. And as a mental health professional, I can say that very proudly, that what is most satisfying for me as a mental health professional is the ability to save lives. Okay, the ability to actually make a difference in an individual's life, that brings me the utmost satisfaction. And I think it should not be restricted to mental health professionals. It should be definitely, as human beings, we need to be more compassionate. We need to be more empathic individuals, and that's going to impact the society at large. Because I'm talking about micro level things at an individual level, but at a society level, if we are able to inculcate these values of empathy, compassion, kindness, and warmth, then I think, in the first instance, children will not resort or experience such kind of things. And we might be able to do prevention at a much larger level, at a community level. I think I probably diverted from the top answer, but I just wanted to highlight that something small acts and just communication, right communication at the right time, in the right manner, in the right setting, will definitely save lives.
Absolutely, ma'am. I think you beautifully highlighted what needs to be done if these warning signs are seen, where you said that parents need to directly talk to the child. Like if the child, ask him about, questions about what he's saying. But that's what the problem lies sometimes, as there are many misconceptions about this topic. Like, children who indulge or talk about death or, wanting to die, they just want attention, and it's only an attention seeking behavior if they are self-harming or talking about that. So it's nothing but they are creating a drama, or it's attention seeking behavior. Or, if we talk about suicide in front of children, then it will provoke them to take that step, or it will put ideas in their mind. And then if a child has decided, if the child, he or she wants to die by suicide, now nothing can be done. This is the end of it. And so there are many such things, which are floating around. So how much of it is a myth, or is there an element of reality to it? What do you think, ma'am?
Right. Oh, yes. These myths are very, very strongly ingrained in our community. And I can tell that through our experience at the Symbiosis Center for Emotional Wellbeing, where now we are running these services for the last 6 years. So many of these myths percolate in our community. Right. I remember that once we were taking this suicide prevention workshop for the faculty, and some faculty, said that, oh, one of the students, he wrote in the answer paper that he doesn't want to live. And, this is attention seeking behavior. Probably the student didn't know the answers, and just to gain sympathy, the child was doing this. And again, see, there is always a chance that somebody might be cheating, right? Always there is a chance. But are you willing to take that risk? This is a risk of life and death, right? And I always feel, again, give the benefit of doubt. So red flags have to be taken seriously. Nobody will generally talk about suicide for seeking attention. Okay, it's a very, very, very painful thought, actually. And that nobody will just say it casually. Very, very rare to find somebody seeking attention through suicidal behaviors or talking about suicide. So it has to be taken seriously, and that it's a myth that it is attention seeking. Secondly, does talking about suicide instill thoughts of suicide? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. So just imagine if somebody asked you or me, are you having any thoughts of not wanting to live? Do you think you're going to get these suicidal thoughts, Sangeeta, if I ask you this? No, right? So you can't plant thoughts in anybody's head. If it has not crossed, my answer is going to be no. It's never crossed my mind. But yes, if you are feeling troubled, if it has crossed your mind, then you're actually opening up, helping the individual to talk. Because this is, as I said, having these suicidal thoughts are very, very distressing, actually. There are so many students whom we have seen over the last, because I've been in this youth mental health field for the last so many years, there are so many students and children who experience suicidal thoughts. Suicidal thoughts are very common. And in every session, I ask them, irrespective of how many follow-ups the child has had with me, no matter how many follow-ups, I will every time ask the child whether they have experienced suicidal thoughts. And you'll not believe, Sangeeta, a large number of students answer is yes. Of course, out of that, there will be a minority of them who have actually gone ahead and attempted. And a past suicide attempt is a major risk factor for present suicide. So never to take, if an individual has attempted in the past, definitely there is a higher risk of the child again attempting, and therefore to be taken very, very seriously. But whether to ask or not, definitely to ask. Okay. Thirdly, only people with mental illness die by suicide is another myth. So as I said, mental illness is a risk factor, but there are many other circumstances in which an individual can feel quite hopeless, worthless, and impulsively also take this drastic step. Okay, individuals who are also struggling with personality disorders or personality issues, where their coping mechanisms are faulty or unhealthy, and where their sense of self is very low. They have a low self-esteem, and who have very turbulent interpersonal relationships. They are also at a high risk of engaging in self-harm or suicidal behavior. So many people feel that those who want to die by suicide, no, it is not preventable. They will die by suicide. That, we cannot prevent it. Again, a myth. As I said, it's absolute a cry for help, and it only goes to show that this individual is finding it very difficult to express and is not able to really come out with their thoughts. But I'm sure that if somebody provides that empathic ear to this individual, somebody really provides that love, affection, kindness to this individual will open up and will talk about the very, very deep thoughts that he or she is experiencing. And therefore, it is definitely preventable. So these are some of the very common myths, Sangeeta, that people have. And I think we really need to, at a mass level, debust them.
Yes. Exactly, ma'am. It was so necessary to debunk the myths, especially talking about suicide. So it's a very hush hush. Don't speak about children. Their parents try to hide. So it was very necessary to debunk some of these myths. And so now that you have been mentioning that feelings of hopelessness or despair, these is one of the prominent reason may take them to think about not wanting to live anymore or suicide. So now coming towards the intervention part, like, can we equip our caregivers, parents, educators with some strategies? Like if they observe that children are consistently reeling under the pressure of hopelessness or despair, so how can they help children develop the coping skills or the emotional strength they need to navigate in this tough time?
Right. So there comes the importance of promotion prevention at a school level or at a family level. So inculcating this, what we call as the socio-emotional skills in children is very important. Now today NEP talks about incorporating social emotional learning in schools, but yet many of the schools are still struggling with coming up with ways in which they can impart social emotional learning skills. Many of the schools are doing it, and that's very, very good. Good sign, but we still seem to be a long way away from that actual goal. So what do I mean by social emotional skills is the ability to form meaningful connections with others, whether it's with teachers, whether it's with family members, with friends, so that whenever there is a need, whenever the child is struggling, because they have the social skills, the communication skills, they will seek support and help immediately. They will not wait for someone to ask them. They themselves, because they have the social skill set, they know that I can reach out to this person because of the communication and interpersonal relations that the child has built because of the social skills. So social skill set is very important to develop right from childhood. And this can be done by parents with their child, by demonstrating that through role modeling itself at home, by communicating with the child, talking with the child respectfully, not judging the child, engaging the child in different social activities, whether it's taking them for sports activities or taking them for family functions, where the child is encouraged to mingle with other family members, right? And again, you don't have to push the child. The child will observe you yourself interacting and on talking openly about, or, I need help with this. And you are seeking help very naturally without feeling guilty or ashamed about seeking help. And the child is observing you, and the child will also learn the same, right? Even in school, you can encourage these social skills through games, through group activities, where the child learns to share, where the child learns to converse, so all these social skills can be developed from an early age, and this is a big protective factor. Second is the emotional skills. So again, it has been seen that children who lack the capacity to express themselves, express their emotions, are the ones who are likely to struggle. Okay. Also, those they're not able to regulate their emotions. We call it as the emotional dysregulation, where they're not able to, when they go into that sad mode, they're not able to come back. Right? Whenever a good activity is also happening, they stay in that sad state. Or when something good also happens, they go into extreme excitement. So they're not able to regulate and balance their emotions. So that's also a skill that can be developed right from an early age. Starting with emotional literacy, where the use of emotions, like emotional language, is encouraged. So, for example, as a mother, if I'm working and I come home and I'm tired, or I'm feeling a little upset about something, then rather than just telling the child off by saying that, go, I don't want to talk to you right now, if the mother itself expresses herself and says that, you know what, I had a very tiring day today and I'm really feeling upset. I want some time for myself. I'll talk to you a little later, but I just need some time for myself right now. Then again, the child is learning that it's okay to express emotions. Most of the times in our homes, we often suppress these emotions. Like a child starts crying, the immediate response of parents I've seen is, stop crying. You don't have to cry over small things. Or especially, again, there's a gender discrimination also at times where boys are told that boys don't cry or boys don't show emotions. Or if a girl gets angry, the girl is told that, you can't show anger because it's not okay for a girl. Post marriage, you'll have problems. You hear these kind of conversations in families. Or even in schools, the language of emotions is not it's only an academic language that is used. That is, if a child is doing well in academics, he's praised. If the child is, participating in extracurricular, yes, you're a good child, you're a bright child, you're a smart child. And children who are not doing well, they're often judged as, you're a lazy child, or you're not a smart child, or you're good for nothing. All these labels get attached to children, which makes the child feel really insecure, and it really challenges their sense of self and self-esteem. And self-esteem is a very, very crucial thing that is actually a protective factor. A healthy sense of self-esteem protects you from all these challenges or the stressors. By encouraging this emotional language, by talking about emotions, by helping the child understand emotions, reading other person's emotions, the child will develop the emotional literacy, which is the first step towards emotional regulation. And then, of course, again, regulation can also be taught. So if we can talk about emotional language through games, activities, we can do some breathing exercises and teach children breathing exercises in school that can help them. Or anger, we can talk about anger and show them some emojis of how to recognize anger, or in their body, how they can feel the emotions, how the mind body is connected, and how just before exams, how you feel the butterflies in your stomach, and you feel a little jittery, and you feel shaky, and you feel like your mouth is going dry. And same thing happens when you are angry. What happens? Your voice increases, your eyes become big, you become red. your hands are shaky, you're trembling, you become warm. Yeah. So all this can be spoken about, and then you can talk about how this can be very hurtful, having these extreme emotions, how it hurts oneself and the other. And then what are some of the techniques that can be used to manage these emotions? If this is taught to children from early age, I'm sure that, this issue will go down, because then they will have the skill set to regulate their emotions. They'll have the skill set to navigate the challenges that life brings, because that is something which we cannot change. Is academic stress going to be eliminated? Not really. Let's be clear that we are living in an uncertain world. AI is bringing in more uncertainty, bringing in changes in the job situations. The job scenario is demanding, competitiveness is only increasing because children are becoming more and more smart and intelligent. So some factors we cannot eliminate. We cannot eliminate stress from our lives. But what we can definitely help is build that resilience, build that skill set in our children to deal with these stressors. And not much needs to be done, Sangeeta. I mean, often it feels like, oh my God, is this something additional now that we'll have to do as teachers in school? Not really. And in fact, I tell parents that it's actually about being loving, caring, and, just demonstrating that warmth and kindness towards your child. And same for teachers. And actually, it's a win-win situation, because when you are demonstrating that loving, and warmth behavior, you are actually calming your own nerves, and it's soothing for your own self. So by doing this, you're actually not only helping the child, but you're helping yourself. And you're creating that environment which is very safe and supportive in your own school, in your own family, which makes it a thriving environment for all. Therefore, I think, it's to raise hope, I think it's important to be empathic, to tell the child that no matter what difficulty you're in, we're in this together, and we will get through it, and we are here to help you and support you, and we'll do whatever it takes to help you come through out of this. And we may need to take support of some other individuals as well, and that's okay. To normalize it, to not make the child feel that, because mental health, again, there's a lot of stigma. So even if the child knows that he's possibly not doing well, the child may not feel comfortable enough to open up, because if there is a stigma, if they've seen that when children go to a counselor, they get labeled. And they see that when the child reaches out to the counselor, oh my God, the news goes to the principal and then the parent is called. Then that becomes a deterrent for the child to seek support. So that sort of an environment we need to create in school, where school counselors are an essential part of the ecosystem. Where they are going to a counselor does not mean that there is something terribly wrong with the child, or there is a weakness in the child, or the child is different. All these judgments and prejudices that we have towards mental health first need to be reflected upon and eliminated, for us to see a meaningful change in our ecosystem. And similarly with families and parents, I think it's very important that, in the house, the environment that you create, I know there's stress in everyone's life and enormous stress, but I think we need to be more patient, more empathic. And I know that most parents intend well for their child, but sometimes these harsh words can be very grueling for a child, especially a growing child, where they see life through you. The world for them is you as parents. They don't know the rest of the world. And as parents, we are constantly trying to tell them, world outside is very harsh, world is bad, you got to prepare yourself. But no, not really. Why do we have to tell them this? You create an environment where they actually develop these feelings of trust, and they feel that this is actually a safe space. The world is safe. Not that the world is ruthless and the world is bad, because if that's the thought process that they're going to grow up with, that the world is a bad place, I can't trust anyone, then they will not be able to trust anyone and open up with anyone. So that trust needs to be built with the child that, yes, no matter what, I'm here for you. No matter what, even if you fail in your exams, even if you have a bad relationship, it's not the end of the world, and that I'm going to love you no matter what. And I demonstrate that through my kind words, and I respect you for who you are, irrespective of your gender, irrespective of your sexual orientation. Uh, I will always be there for you. If that emotion is being conveyed clearly and honestly, then I think it's not a difficult job at all. It is, it's much doable. And as I said, it's a win-win for both parents, for teachers, and for children.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much again for beautifully highlighting this, and especially bringing the attention that only academics is not important. Again, parents have to be on the lookout for the emotional and the social skills enhancement as well. So are there any resources available where parents can turn to, or if the children or they themselves are going through something like any underlying mental health condition, any neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, ADHD, learning difficulties, or any behavioral issues. So any resource or any resources that you can highlight which could help them?
Sure. So just like if you were physically unwell, whom would you reach out to? You would reach out to your pediatrician or your physician or a doctor, right? Essentially. So similarly, when you're seeing signs of mental health issues, you reach out to a mental health professional. So who are the mental health professionals? Psychologists, psychiatrists. These two are the prominent ones in our community who will help you with your emotional health issues or mental health issues, right? For neurodevelopmental disorders or children with behavioral issues, there are specific centers where you can get the multidisciplinary input. And I'm fortunate to share that at Symbiosis itself, we have our Child Learning and Development Center at the Model Colony premises, the Symbiosis School. And thank you, Sangeeta, for sharing this slide. So children between the age of 3 to 15 are being catered here at the Child Learning and Development Center. So children with any academic difficulties, any scholastic difficulties, any behavioral issues, any issues with respect to being hyperactive or any speech issues, or not having the social skills, probably suspecting that the child is on the autistic spectrum, or child having difficulties in reading, writing. All these issues, this Child Learning Development Center is tailored to handle. And we have a multidisciplinary team there with an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, a remedial educator, a special educator, a counselor or a psychologist who can assess, and also a psychiatrist who can provide with medications if necessary. So this is one of the centers at Model Colony, and there are a couple of others also in Pune. There are a lot of helpline numbers that are available, which there are national helpline numbers for suicide. The recently launched Telemanas through the NIMHANS, the National Institute of Mental Health, and at Bangalore has come up with the Telemanas helpline. Then there is Connecting NGO in Pune that also offers a helpline. So there are multiple resources that can assist parents, educators to identify if there are any mental health issues in their child and guide you appropriately. So do not hesitate to seek that help and reach out to any professional that you might know. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think it was really necessary because parents shouldn't feel stranded if they are noticing some of the signs and issues, and they can reach out for help at these centers. And so coming towards now, end of the webinar. So as before we end, would you like to end with some closing remarks? Like, what would you say would be the important takeaway message for parents, or with what message would you like to leave them?
I think I want to give them lots of hope. Because you know what, Sangeeta, like post-pandemic, as mental health professional, our job has become so busy. Everywhere I go, anybody I speak to, all they talk about is how much stress, so many problems with their children, in their families, with health. The new normal has not been easy. It has not been easy. It has been a challenging journey for a lot of individuals. And I hear this because as a mental health professional, people come and talk to me and share their experiences. So, but even with all of this, as I said, that fortunately we do have some inherent strengths as human beings, the strength of gratitude, the strength of optimism, the strength of compassion, uh, the strength of empathy, the strength of communication. Uh, we are social beings, so the ability to connect uh, is something that nobody can take away from us. Everything else can change around us, but these inherent human values cannot be taken away from us unless we choose to be not pay attention to it. So I think I only want to leave the audience with these closing remarks that life is indeed beautiful, and there is hope in every challenge. You will find people who will help you to go problem solve if you're experiencing any problems. The only thing we need to do is talk and openly talk about our problems. No problem is big, small, petty. Uh, Problem is a problem, and that there is a solution for every problem. So let's be hopeful and let us all strive to prevent suicides around us. Let's be more observant, more vigilant. Let's be more kind, compassionate, and empathic, and make this world a beautiful place for us to all thrive and flourish.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I hope today's conversation and the points that you highlighted would have definitely instilled the seeds, have planted the seeds of hope, have planted the seeds of awareness, resilience, and definitely hope in our audience. And with that, we come towards the end of today's insightful, informative webinar. And before that, I would like to thank our audience, heartfelt gratitude for joining us today. And of course, a big thanks to Dr. Girija ma'am that, sharing her time and wisdom with us today. And that must have been very helpful for our audience. And of course, I would like to thank our team of school counselors, Harshada, Suvarna, Shambhavi, and Reena for helping by organizing this webinar. And of course, big thanks to our IT team, without whom the webinar would not have been possible. So thank you so much until we meet again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot. Close झालं ना?
Yeah. So.
ठीक झालं?
Yes, ma'am. I'll ask her. We can leave the Zoom meeting so then. Yeah.
Should we leave the Zoom meeting?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Okay. So
then.
Hello, ma'am.